The alien bazaar was loud, dusty, and full of strange smells. Vendors shouted in many alien languages, selling everything from glowing fruits to living, talking bags. But in one dark corner of the market, no one shouted, no one looked, no one cared. There sat a small rusty cage. Inside it, curled up like a scared animal, was a tiny alien girl. She was no taller than a parrot, her skin pale blue, her silver eyes wide and empty. She wore only a torn cloth, and her thin arms hugged her knees tightly. People passed by without stopping. Some laughed, some spat. One child even poked the cage with a stick before his father pulled him away. "She's worthless," the alien vendor grunted, sitting beside the cage. "Too small, too weak, no good for work or play." The vendor scratched his belly and drank from a slimy bottle. The little girl didn't even blink. She just sat there, quiet, like she wasn't really alive anymore. But then, a human walked by. He was tall, wore a brown jacket and boots full of dust. His name was Jack, and he had seen a lot in this galaxy. But when he saw the cage, he stopped. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the way her tiny fingers were wrapped around the bars. Maybe it was her eyes, like someone who had given up long ago. He knelt down. The girl looked at him, and for the first time in hours, maybe days, she moved. "Help me," she whispered. Barely a sound. Jack blinked. He hadn't expected her to speak. She looked around quickly, then whispered again. "Or just kill me." Jack felt a chill go through his spine. He looked at the vendor. "How much for the girl?" he asked. The vendor laughed. "You want that thing? It's a joke, but sure." 10,000 credits. Jack whistled. "Too high. She's got a tracker." The vendor shrugged. "Comes with trouble. I'd rather keep her than get less." Jack looked back at the girl. She didn't cry, didn't beg. She had no hope left. But something about her pulled at his heart. "She eat anything?" Jack asked. The vendor laughed. "Hasn't eaten in 3 days, won't talk. Useless." Jack stood up and reached into his pocket. He only had a few hundred credits, not even close. But he had something better luck. "Let's play a game," Jack said. "I win. I get the girl." The vendor raised an eyebrow. "And if you lose?" Jack smiled. "You keep my boots, jacket, and ship access card." The vendor leaned forward, grinning. "You've got a deal, human." The little girl watched as Jack and the vendor walked into the nearby tavern. She didn't understand the game. But she understood one thing. This was the first time someone tried to fight for her. And something deep inside her heart, something long dead, moved again. Hope. She curled her fingers tighter around the cage bars and whispered, "Please win." The tavern smelled like sweat, spilled oil, and old blood. Alien thugs sat at crooked tables, drinking strange-colored liquids, laughing loudly. But all laughter stopped when Jack stepped inside. Behind him, the cage vendor walked in, smiling, with yellow teeth. "This human thinks he can beat me in cards," the vendor shouted. "For a slave." The room grew silent, then roared with laughter. A few even stood up to watch. No one cared about the tiny alien girl, just the chance to see a human lose everything. Jack pulled out a small deck of old Earth cards. The vendor slammed down his own slimy deck made from something still twitching. "We use mine," the vendor hissed. Jack smiled. "Fine, but no poison tricks this time, only cheating with style." The vendor laughed, showing his sharp teeth. They sat across from each other. The table creaked under their elbows. 2 drinks were poured, and 2 knives were set in the middle, not part of the game. Just tradition. If someone cheated too much, well, the knives had their own rules. Meanwhile, in the dark alley outside, the tiny alien girl sat curled in her cage. She didn't know the game, didn't know the rules, but deep inside she prayed. Not to any god, just to the stars, please. Let him win. Back inside, the first hand began. Cards slapped the table. Coins clinked. Sweat rolled. Jack played calm, quiet, like a man used to pressure. The vendor played loud, wild, but his eyes were sharp like a knife ready to cut. "You bluff like a weakling," the vendor barked. Jack grinned. Maybe I'm just lucky. The next round Jack lost. Then another he lost again. The crowd booed, coins flew, and someone shouted, "Feed the human to the crawler pit." Jack wiped his forehead. He had one last chance, the final hand. Winner takes the cage and everything else. The vendor leaned forward, eyes glowing. "This is it," he said. "If I win, I get your boots, your ship, and you walk home naked." Jack looked him dead in the eyes. "If I win." She walks free. The cards were dealt, slow and silent. The crowd held its breath. The vendor smiled wide. Jack's face showed nothing, then slam. Jack put down his hand. "Royal flair," he said. Gasps, curses, chairs fell over. The vendor's hand shook. He laid his cards down one by one, strong. But not enough. Nitrogen monoxide. He roared, slamming the table. "You cheated." He reached for the knife, but Jack's hand was faster, grabbing it first. "Try it," Jack warned. Eyes cold as steel. The vendor froze. The room went silent again. Jack stood up, tossed the knife aside, and walked out. Outside, the little girl looked up, confused. Jack knelt by the cage and whispered, "You're free now." The girl stared at him like he spoke a lie. No one frees a thing like me," she said. Jack pulled out a small key and unlocked the cage. He didn't touch her. He just opened the door. "Come out when you're ready," he said softly. Then he turned and began to walk away, but after 2 steps, he heard a sound, tiny feet, stepping on dusty stone. She was following him, slow, scared, but free, and above them, on a dark rooftop, a shadow watched. It tapped a small device and whispered into a communicator, "The girl is out. The human has her. Should we engage?" A cold voice answered, "Not yet. Let them run. We'll collect them both soon." Jack's small ship hummed quietly as it flew through the dusty edge of a star system. The stars outside were cold and silent. Inside, the air was warm. But the silence between them was heavier. The alien girl sat on the far end of the cabin. Knees hugged to her chest. She hadn't spoken a word since they left the marketplace. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor, like she was afraid to look at anything. Jack placed a soft blanket near her, then a small cup of warm soup. He didn't push her. He didn't speak. He just sat across the room, busying himself with the ship's controls. After a few minutes, her tiny fingers slowly reached for the cup. She sniffed it, then drank, her hands shaking. Jack smiled quietly, but said nothing. He knew the look in her eyes. He'd seen it in war survivors. It was the look of someone who'd been owned. Hurt, broken. Suddenly she asked in a whisper, "What do I do now?" Jack turned. "You do whatever you want." Her lips trembled. "But I don't know how to want anything." Jack got up slowly and knelt beside her. "You're not a pet," he said gently. "You're not a toy. And you're not property." She flinched, as if the word property burned her. Jack noticed a faint metal mark on her shoulder like a brand. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "They never gave me one." "You must have had one before the cage." "I forgot," she said, voice small. "They beat it out of me." Jack sat beside her now, not too close. "Well, we'll pick a new one. Something you like." She looked up, eyes wide. "I can choose?" "For the first time, yeah." Jack nodded. She thought for a long while, then whispered, "Kari. My mother used to say that word." "I think it meant light," Jack smiled. "Kari it is." But before the moment could rest, a soft beep sounded from the ship's console. Jack stood, checked the screen, and his eyes narrowed. A small tracker signal had lit up. Someone was following them. He didn't tell her. Not yet. She didn't need more fear tonight. Instead, he locked the ship's course toward a remote moon. Old, uninhabited, and quiet. They could hide there, just for now. As the ship landed gently, Kari followed him outside. She looked around the rocky terrain, confused. "Are you selling me to someone else here?" she asked without emotion. Jack turned sharply, shocked. "No. Kari, Why would you say that? She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed at her neck. The collar's gone. But the fear stays, she said, her voice hollow. Jack crouched down and took out a small mirror. Look, he said. You're free now. She looked into the mirror and froze. She hadn't seen her face in years. Tears filled her silver eyes. She looked older than she remembered, even though her body was small and childlike. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, not forcefully, just there. You'll find her again, he said, and until you do, I'll stay right here. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed in the distance. A ship landing nearby. Jack pulled out. Small blaster, eyes alert. Kari grabbed his coat. They're here, aren't they? Jack didn't answer, but he looked at her and said, time to find out what makes you so special. They'd crossed the galaxy to keep you locked in a cage. The wind on the moon was silent. No birds, no voices, no machines. Only the faint hum of Jack's ship cooling down. But inside the small shelter, something strange had started. Kari sat on a folded blanket, watching the fire Jack made using old heating rods. She looked calm, but her hands trembled slightly. Jack had noticed it. She was hiding something. Something. She hadn't told him yet. He crouched next to her with a warm cloth and tried to clean the dirt off her skin. When he gently moved her long silver hair aside, he saw it. A thin scar, shaped like a half-moon. Just behind her ear, Kari. He said slowly, "What's this?" Her eyes went wide, and she slapped his hand away. "No, don't touch it." Jack froze. Her breathing grew fast, chest rising and falling like she was about to pass out. "Did they hurt you there?" he asked gently. Kari didn't answer right away, but then she whispered, "It's not just a scar." Jack looked closer without touching. Beneath the skin, something faintly glowed blue like a circuit. "A chip?" he said, shocked. Kari nodded slowly. "They used it to track me, punish me." "And worse." Jack sat down, trying to stay calm. "Worse how?" Kari's voice cracked. "If I disobeyed orders? Or spoke the wrong word?" They pressed a button. She didn't have to explain more. Jack understood. Pain control, tracking, maybe even mind tampering. He had heard of tech like this during the Orion slave wars. Illegal, cruel, and expensive, they said it was. Too dangerous to remove, Kari said, curling up. "That I would die if it was touched wrong." Jack frowned, thinking hard. "But why go through so much trouble for you?" She didn't answer, but her fingers slowly touched the scar, and she whispered, "I wasn't supposed to live. My kind, we were erased." Jack blinked. "Erased? You mean extinct?" Kari nodded, eyes filling with tears. "I'm the last of my species. They kept me alive as a test subject." Jack's stomach turned. Now he understood the cage, the cruelty, the fear that followed her like a shadow. "You're not a test subject anymore," Jack said. "We'll get that thing out. And then you're free for real." But before Kari could respond, the glowing chip flashed. A loud beep rang through the shelter, and the lights blinked out. Kari screamed and grabbed her head. Falling to her knees, Jack ran to her. But the sound was inside her skull, now vibrating. Pulsing, her eyes rolled back, and strange glowing symbols flickered across her skin. "What the hell is this?" Jack shouted, trying to hold her still. Her voice came out in a whisper. But it wasn't her own. It was deeper, older, like something waking up. "Royal code. ACTIVATE." The fire flickered. The ship outside sparked to life. And deep under the surface of the moon, an ancient signal began to pulse. Jack stared at Kari, shocked. "What are you?" he whispered, but Kari was shaking, eyes blank, voice trembling. I think I was more than a prisoner," she whispered. "I think I was a weapon." Night fell quickly on the dead moon. No stars moved, no clouds drifted, just darkness. Deep and quiet. Too quiet. Jack stood outside the shelter, a blaster in one hand, a motion scanner in the other. His eyes searched the hills beyond the landing zone. He had buried the ship underground, activated cloaking, and turned off every light. Still, the silence felt wrong inside the shelter. Kari sat huddled in a corner, her arms wrapped around herself. She hadn't spoken much since the chip activated earlier, but something had changed. Her skin was still faintly glowing, her eyes shining like twin moons. Jack stepped back inside. "You okay?" Kari didn't look at him, just whispered, "They know where I am now." Jack nodded grimly. "I know. I can feel it." Suddenly, beep, beep. The motion scanner screamed in his hand. Jack ran to the console and looked at the screen. 3 ships. No, 4, descending fast. "Company's here," he muttered, grabbing extra weapons and tossing one toward Kari, but she didn't move. Her eyes were closed, her face calm, too calm. Outside, a storm of wind and dust erupted as the enemy landed. Sleek black ships touched the surface like birds of prey. From them, tall figures in silver armor stepped out, eyes glowing red, weapons humming with energy. They didn't speak, they moved like ghosts, fanning out in silence, surrounding the shelter. Inside, Jack took a deep breath. He wasn't a soldier anymore, but he'd fought worse odds before. Maybe not this bad, but close enough. He turned to Kari. "If you can run, now's the time." But Kari stood slowly, eyes glowing brighter. "I'm not running anymore," she said softly. Jack blinked. "Wait, what are you?" Too late. Boom. The wall exploded as armored troopers stormed in. Jack fired first, taking down 2 before rolling behind cover. He shouted, "Kari, stay down." But she didn't. Kari stepped into the open, arms raised, eyes glowing white now. The attackers paused, weapons still raised but confused, and then everything stopped, literally stopped. Time slowed. Blaster bolts froze in the air. Dust hung like paint, unmoving. Jack gasped, his body frozen too, but his mind still alive. Kari floated slightly off the ground now, symbols glowing across her arms and neck. She looked at each soldier and whispered a word Jack didn't understand. Their armor cracked, their eyes shut, and one by one, they fell. All of them. Every enemy collapsed without a scream, without a shot, like puppets with strings cut. And just like that, time snapped back. Dust fell, lights flickered, and Jack dropped to his knees, breathing hard. Kari stood silently, eyes dimming again, her body trembling. She looked at her hands like she didn't recognize them, then looked at Jack, terrified. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I didn't know I could." Jack rushed to her, holding her gently. "You saved us," he said softly. "Whatever you did, you saved us." Kari began to cry, but not from fear, from something deeper, grief, guilt, memory. "I remember now," she sobbed. "They didn't just test me. They built me." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Built?" Kari looked up, tears glowing in her silver eyes. "I was made to be a weapon, a living code for war." The dead moon was no longer quiet. Smoke rose from the battlefield, black streaks painting the sky. The fallen soldiers, those who came for Kari, lay cold in the dust, but Kari didn't feel victorious. She stood in silence, staring at her hands. They had glowed, sparked, destroyed, but now they only shook. Jack was inside the ship, working fast. He had seen her power, seen her become something else. She didn't remember all of it, just broken pieces. A lab, white walls, a metal cradle, voices arguing over her body. One said, "She's too unstable." Another said, "She's the key to controlling all living code." Jack rushed out, holding a bag of supplies and a small data chip. "We need to leave. More will come," he said quickly. Kari looked up. "They'll find me no matter where we go." "Not Earth," Jack said. "It's protected. Human airspace, hard to track signals. And I know a guy there." He stopped, hesitated, then added, "He removes trackers. The illegal kind." Kari touched the scar behind her ear. "If he fails." Jack met her gaze, firm and calm. "He won't." She nodded, "Just once," and they boarded the ship. As the engines roared to life, the moon below vanished behind dust and fire. Kari looked out the window for a long time. She didn't know why. But she felt like she had just left the place where she died, and now something new might begin. The journey to Earth took 2 jumps. Each time they passed a security gate, Kari hid in the maintenance bay. Jack had forged IDs, changed ship codes, and used backdoor flight paths. He had done this before for others, for those in trouble, but this time it felt different. He wasn't just smuggling a refugee. He was protecting someone special, someone broken, and still beautiful inside. While they traveled, Kari asked questions, simple ones. What is a tree? Do humans fly without ships? Why do you smile when I say your name? Jack answered every question with patience. He showed her a holomap of Earth, its blue oceans, green forests, and white-capped mountains. She stared at it with wide eyes. It looks soft, she whispered. Jack chuckled. Sometimes. But it's also full of people who fight for freedom. People like me. Kari looked at him carefully, then said something that stopped his breath. I want to be like that too. They landed on Earth at night, in an abandoned field near the edge of New Oslo. Jack's contact lived underground literally. The man was old, blind in one eye, and smelled like burnt wires, but his hands were steady. Tracker, huh? He said, touching the chip behind Kari's ear with gentle fingers. This one's not military. It's something older. Royal code. Experimental biotech. Jack tensed. Can you get it out? The man looked at Kari, then nodded slowly. Yes, but if she screams. Don't stop me. The procedure lasted 6 hours. Kari never screamed. She didn't cry either. She only held Jack's hand and whispered, I don't want to be their weapon anymore. When it was done, the chip sat on the table dead black. Harmless. Kari touched her neck and smiled for the first time. A real smile. Small and soft, but real. Am I free now? She asked. Jack nodded. Yes, Kari, you are. But just as they stepped outside, a sharp sound pierced the air. A transmission, faint but clear, echoed from Jack's old communicator. To the human harboring Subject 0. Return her or face extinction protocol. Kari froze. Jack looked up at the stars. They found us, he muttered. But Kari's eyes didn't show fear anymore. They showed fire. No, she said calmly. They found me, yes. But I've found something too. Jack turned to her. What's that? Kari stepped beside him, holding his hand, her voice steady. I found where I belong. Earth's skies lit up like fire. Alien ships, dark, massive, silent, hovered above the clouds. They made no threats, fired no weapons. They just waited. Inside a hidden Earth bunker, diplomats and generals panicked. News broadcasts shouted. Unknown armada over human territory. But one name kept appearing in hushed whispers. Subject 0. The girl they're after. Kari stood beside Jack on the rooftop of an old observatory. The wind played with her silver hair, her glowing eyes fixed on the sky. She didn't look scared. She looked ready. Jack leaned beside her, armed, armored, and angry. If they try to take you, we'll fight, he said. Kari smiled softly. You already fought for me. That's why they're afraid. A voice rang out through every ship. Screen and channel. Deep, cold, commanding. Return the weapon. This is not your war, humans. She belongs to us. But this time, Kari stepped forward. She pressed a communicator. Button stood tall and spoke with fire in her voice. I don't belong to anyone. I am not a weapon. I am not property. I am Kari, and I choose Earth. For a few seconds, the whole planet held its breath. Then came the reply, slow and dangerous. You were built to obey. Built to destroy. You cannot choose. Kari raised her hand and the sky pulsed. The ships above shimmered. Systems blinking, reacting to something inside her. She didn't even try. It just happened. Jack looked at her in awe. What did you do? Kari looked surprised herself. They connected me to their systems. But they forgot one thing. Jack raised an eyebrow. What's that? Kari turned and smiled. Even a tiny queen can seize the throne. Boom! One of the lead ships powered down, spiraling slowly into the sea, empty, unharmed. But hers now. The others backed away instantly, like wolves who'd just seen the pack leader fall from orbit. A transmission crackled through, a desperate whisper. Kari, please, don't start a war. Kari paused, then spoke gently. Then leave me be. I'm not your toy. I'm not your code. I'm just a girl who chose kindness over control. Silence followed then. The ships began to leave, one by one, fading into stars. The danger was gone, but Earth would never forget what happened. And neither would Kari. Weeks passed. Kari stayed with Jack, living in a small countryside house filled with trees, birds, and laughter. She learned how to cook, how to read old paper books, and how to laugh without flinching. One day, she planted a small flower in the garden. Jack asked, "What's it called?" Kari shrugged. "I don't know. I made it up. It's called hope." And one morning, the president of Earth herself came to visit. She offered Kari a title, a position, an army. Kari simply smiled and shook her head. "I don't need a crown to be queen," she said. "I already found my kingdom." Then she looked at Jack. "It's here. It's him. It's peace." But stories of her spread across the galaxy. They called her the Tiny Queen, the girl who brought giants to their knees without firing a single shot. Some feared her, some worshipped her, but none could deny her power nor her humanity. In the end, Kari, once locked in a rusty cage, treated like garbage, became a symbol of something greater than war. She was proof that even the smallest soul, even the most broken creature, could rise, could choose, could change. The stars, all because one human chose to stop, look, and say, "You don't belong in a cage."